Brewster here with a new episode of Chordplay. This is the Chords of Bon Jovi, and the mighty Bon Jovi formed in New Jersey in 1983, and after they released their first single, Runaway, which exploded, the band was formed. They recorded their first album, the self-titled Bon Jovi album. They followed that with 7800 Degrees Fahrenheit, a painfully overlooked Bon Jovi record, and then their third album, Slippery When Wet, just erupted like an earthquake. It was huge, all over radio, MTV, sold-out concert tour. Definitely, Bon Jovi was on the map, and they've maintained their popularity and fame ever since. They've had some member changes, but they've released, 15 studio albums, like 3 live albums, a handful of compilations. They've sold over 120 million albums, worldwide. Definitely, Bon Jovi's huge, rock legends. So in my mind, you really can't talk about the guitars of Bon Jovi without talking about Richie Sambora, the original guitarist in the band. And he left the group about 10 years ago. It was around 2013. And Phil X actually, stepped in and replaced him. But there's something about Richie, like those classic, albums, those classic licks and riffs, tons of whammy bar abuse and harmonics and stuff, and really interesting guitarist for sure. I'm definitely a big Sambora fan, even though Phil X is a badass too. But there's just something about Richie Sambora. He's a legend. So the music and chord-based examples in this episode came from 3 different Bon Jovi albums, and this is the first time I featured Bon Jovi on the channel here, so I wanted to do this right and really attack those early, releases. And that's the first album, 7800 Degrees Fahrenheit, and Slippery When Wet. And there's just something about their music at that time. And just as a reminder, this is Chordplay, so I'm not really worried about famous songs or hits. I'm focusing on chords and rhythm guitar parts and chord progressions, that are kind of unusual or different or inspiring. And honestly, there's only one song in this lesson that was released as a single, and everything else is kind of deep cuts and, B-sides. But there's some great stuff hiding in this episode, so here we go. With the opening, that's the song Get Ready from the first Bon Jovi album, and it's something like this. So bang this E power chord, slide it off, and hit that low E open, and then it's an A over C sharp to a D power chord right there. So it's a pretty basic power chord riff, but it's really aggressive. And then you're going to spell out a D major arpeggio to an A major right here. And then just end with an E power chord right there. And do it again. The second time, just dive and open A with your bar, and then do the whole thing again. Next up's the song Roulette from the first Bon Jovi album, and it's something like this. So it starts off with this E5 kind of spelled out like this, kind of quiet, and it swells and gets a little louder, and then there's a hit on a chord. And it keeps going. And another hit on that E5 power chord. And then you hear this riff. Just pummel that low E open, and then an E power chord slid off. D5, and then C5, and there's a second guitar part that creeps in, and I'm going to loop this with the TC Electronic Ditto looper. So here's guitar 1, and I'm going to play guitar 2. That. I actually played it twice there accidentally. But the second guitar is actually just playing a little part of E minor, a little part of D major, and like a 5th fret harmonic there on the G string. And you kind of hear him get a little wild with it, and then a low E, kind of growling low E dive with your bar. Roulette's a cool song. Check that out. Next up's the song Secret Dreams from the album 7800 Degrees Fahrenheit. And this is kind of an unexpected riff from Bon Jovi. I think the drummer, Tico Torres, actually wrote this, but Secret Dreams is something like this. Something like that. So it's going to look like a B5 over E right here. But let's relate that to E, because we're playing that low E against it. So you could think of that as like an E add 9, right? Like an E5, but then that F sharp is your 9th. Like that. Like this. Right there you're going to reach up and grab that G. And then you're moving up to this, and that's going to be like a C sharp 4 or sharp 11 right there implied. So do that C, sharp 11, and then C5 to D5 right there. Go back to the first riff. Last time right there, do that C sharp 11 to C5, and then single notes G, F sharp to E, like this. Like I said, really unexpected riff from Bon Jovi. That doesn't sound like Bon Jovi. It sounds like it belongs in a mosh pit somewhere. Next up's the song Always Run to You from 7800 Degrees Fahrenheit. And once again, this doesn't sound like Bon Jovi. It sounds like Judas Priest or somebody. Like this. So you're hopelessly just bashing the series of A-related power chords right there, all those little partial shapes like this. So you can think of that like a partial A, well A5, partial B, C, and D5 against A, like that. Right there there, just do that A to partial B, and then a single note riff right there, and then 2 A5s, and then loop all that again. Just hang on that G and then goes in the verse right there. Cool riff, real simple, but really cool. Next up's the song Tokyo Road. This also came from the album 7800 Degrees Fahrenheit, and this showcases some of Sambora's whammy abuse or tremolo bar abuse, like this. So we're way up here, and that's a G sus4 to G major implied, and you'll notice he's diving or dipping his bar like this. So, you know, implied G sus4 to G major after the dips. And then do the same thing right here in F, F sus4 to F major. And then C sus4 to C major. But right there, you're going to basically move back to an implied G, like that. Kind of a smeared double stop into that single G note right there. Like that. And repeat the first part again. And you'll hear that same double stop, and then just a single open G string, kind of slowly, you know, diving with the bar. Like that. It goes into G after that, like for the verse or whatever. But that's definitely kind of a signature Bon Jovi move. Last but not least is the song Let It Rock, the opening track from the album Slippery When Wet. And once again, we're seeing some of Richie Sambora's whammy abuse or tremolo bar abuse with this riff, like this. Like that. So we're actually doing, you know, partial chords once again. Partial D sus4 to D major. Wiggle that bar, and then it's basically a C sus4 over D to C major over D. You're going to smear that C sus4 over D. Like that. Like strum the chord, dip your bar, and then kind of let it come back up. Stay on that C sus4 over D to C over D, and then G to F power chords, and then a huge D5 over A right there, and then you distinctly hear an open D string, you know, dive with the bar, and then do all that again. This song's actually tuned in drop D, but I just demonstrated that in standard like that. But that's a great song, and I love those smeared bar chords. Really cool. Definitely a Sambora signature move right there. That's going to wrap this episode of Chordplay with the Chords of Bon Jovi. Definitely a legendary band, and I did see Bon Jovi back in the day. I was just a puppy back then, and Skid Row opened the show. And it was like Skid Row came out and they just left a black mark on the pavement. And, you know, Sebastian Bach dropped like 1,000 F-bombs. I wasn't really, you know, offended. I was just like really impressed. Like, wow, I've never heard the F word that many times. And then Bon Jovi came out and they were polished and classy. So it was like this chaotic, you know, Skid Row set followed by a very polished, you know, Bon Jovi set. And I remember watching them and watching Richie. And he just had style and class. You know, I was really impressed leaving that show. And played, you know, the licks and solos exactly like the album. I was really blown away. And I know Phil X, kind of replaced Richie about 10 years ago in the band. There's been a lot of speculation online about Richie coming back and either touring or recording or something with the group. And I hope he does, because definitely he's a legend. And no offense to Phil X, but when I think of John Bon Jovi, I think of Richie Sambora right beside him, either playing guitar or singing or whatever. I mean, they're like that dynamic duo, for sure. So anyway, leave some feedback and comments. Please subscribe to my lessons, and I'll be back before you know with more content and material. Thank you.